Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2nd Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. Now, when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of the godliness of Onias the high priest, and his hatred of wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and magnify the temple with their best gifts. Now, we're in the intertestamental period, right? This is the time between the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? After the Persians had ruled and went down and the Greeks, were ruling. So we're not in the time of the New Testament yet. And when you read in the book of Josephus, you'll get more details about this when it mentions the kings themselves honoring the place. You had a lot of different, like notable men and rulers that actually did bless us with gold and silver and, a lot of things for the beautifying of the temple. Okay. Verse 3, in so much that Seleucus of Asia, of his own revenues, bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices. This is referring to Seleucus the Fourth. I believe it was Philopator. Let's take a look there. Seleucus the Fourth. Yep, Philopator. So this Seleucus, right, was the king at the time of what we're reading here in 2nd Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. And his brother, Antiochus Epiphanes, at this time was a hostage at Rome. We went into that in the book of 1st Maccabees, okay? Due to their father, Antiochus III, who went to war with Rome and lost. And the treaty in which he signed required that he would provide hostages as part of the stipulations. So Antiochus Epiphanes, at this point, is a hostage at Rome. His brother, Seleucus IV Philopator, is ruling. And one of his, and that's where you get Heliodorus, right? One of his generals is Heliodorus, right? Now, eventually, as we're going to read, Antiochus escapes from being a prisoner or a hostage at Rome, even though he made some friends there. He comes over to the east where the Seleucid Empire is reigning. But at that point, Seleucus is already dead. This Seleucus is dead. And he's dead because Heliodorus assassinated him, right? According to secular history, Heliodorus ended up killing him. Now, was it because he sent Heliodorus to go get his ass beat, which we'll read about in 2nd Maccabees? Who knows, right? But Heliodorus takes out Seleucus, and Seleucus' son, whose name was also Antiochus, is basically the heir to the throne. But you got Heliodorus as there, kind of like, ruling as regent. And then Antiochus Epiphanes comes in there, kicks out Heliodorus, whether he slays him or gets him out of there. Point is, he's up out of there. And then eventually he has the right heir, Seleucus' son, killed, and he usurps the throne. So that's how Antiochus Epiphanes gets into the picture. In fact, that's how he gets that throne, okay, and then, begins his demonic activities upon Israel. So continuing here in 2nd Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, Seleucus, as it says, of his own revenues, right, bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices. So he, you could say, funded the temple for the costs of the sacrifices and so on. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out. So he was he had a certain position, of governing things, but he was under, obviously, the high priest. But he had a falling out with the high priest about disorder in the city. So something going on in the city. They had differing opinions on it, and they just couldn't see eye to eye. All right. So what does Simon do? Verse 5, and when he could not overcome Onias, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Thracius, who then was governor of Selo, Syria, which is Coel, Syria, and Phoenice, which is Phoenicia. So he sees that, all right, he doesn't have enough authority to override Onias' word. So instead, he goes to this other governor, Apollonius. and told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable. So he's like, yo, there's a lot of money in the treasury. Money that's not even for the sacrifices. It's just a whole bunch of money in there, riches. And that it was possible to bring it all into the king's hand. And he's like, look, and he's probably sweet talking this guy, because he's like, if I and you can work together to get this money into the king's hand, what kind of reward do you think he'll give us? Now, when Apollonius came to the king, which actually, let's look up this name here, Apollonius, whatnot, Apollonius. Okay. So where we at with it? Right, verse 7. Now when Apollonius came to the king and had shewed him of the money whereof he was told, so he gave him the report, the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with a commandment to bring him the foresaid money. Go in there and bring me that money. So forthwith Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Seleucia and Phoenice. The color means under the pretense. You right? Oh, he's just visiting the cities. But indeed to fulfill the king's purpose, right? He had an actual intent of coming there. And when he was come to Jerusalem and had been courteously received of the high priest of the city, so he was welcomed, he told him what intelligence was given of the money. So he said, look, we've gotten word that this is the case here. This is money, extra money in the treasury here, and what's going on. And declared wherefore he came, and asked if these things were so indeed, right? The king said that I have to come and collect this money for him. Is this truly the case, right? Can you show me the treasury? Is there stuff? What's up with that? Then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for the relief of widows and the fatherless children. So this was like to take care of those that are needy in our society. It's not just like to splurge. And that some of it belonged to Hyrcanus, son of Tobias, a man of great dignity. I think he's also, either him or Tobias might be mentioned in the book of Josephus, actually. And it's actually an interesting story, I think, when you can read about it. But let's look up here. Tobias and Josephus. Yeah, in the Antiquities of the Jews, Tobias refers to a prominent, wealthy Jewish family, the Tobiads, from the 3rd to 2nd century BCE, particularly Tobias, the father of the influential Joseph, the Tobiad. Yep, that's him, Joseph. There's an interesting story in the book of Josephus about him. Known for their Hellenizing tendencies, clashes with the Hasmoneans, and involvement in the Hellenistic conflicts leading to the Maccabean revolt, Josephus details how this family, including Joseph and his son, Hyrcanus, became powerful figures in Ptolemaic Egypt, even opposing traditional Jewish leadership in Jerusalem. Yep. So it says here, Tobias the elder, a prominent Jewish figure in Jerusalem, father of Joseph, known for his wealth and influence and his family's embrace of Greek customs. Joseph the Tobiad, Tobias' son, who gained immense power in Egypt as a tax collector under Ptolemy III, but later became entangled in political intrigue in Jerusalem, siding with the Hellenizing factions. The Tobiads, a powerful family dynasty that clashed with the Hasmonean high priests and supported Hellenization, playing a significant role in the lead-up to the Maccabean revolt. So, like I said, should be some more in the book of Josephus if you are interested. But that's who you get Hyrcanus from. A man of great dignity, and not as that wicked Simon had misinformed. So he's saying, no, that money isn't, it's not like he said, it's not just money sitting there like we just gathering up money and splurging. The sum whereof in all was 400 talents of silver, which is a lot, and 200 of gold. And that it was altogether impossible that such wrongs should be done unto them that had committed it to the holiness of the place, right? So he's like, we can't do this to just give up this money. That would be wrong, especially to those that donated or gave us the money, right, to be put in the holy place in the temple, and to the majesty and inviolable sanctity of the temple, honored all over the world. So the temple was like people knew the temple of the Jews, man. That thing is, that place is, you know, one of the wonders of the world. But Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury. So he's like, look, it still has to be brought to the king's treasury. That was his order. So at the day which he appointed, he entered in to order this matter. Wherefore there was no small agony throughout the whole city. So at the appointed time, he came in there. It's time to give up that money. Now, this is when it says no small agony. That's Old English for it was a great. Because if something is not small, it's great, right? So no small agony is just like another way of emphasizing how intense and great and it was in a bad sense here, right? Because it's agony. But the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar in their priest's vestments, called unto heaven upon him that made a law concerning things to be kept, right? So they prayed upon him that made a law, which is the Most High, concerning things to be concerning things given. So the Lord gave us laws concerning the things that we should and shouldn't do, and they prayed to that God to be kept, to be protected. It says he, but it should say be. That they should safely be preserved for such as had committed them to be kept. Okay, so basically being preserved and the protection of that treasury, so it's not taken by Heliodorus. Then whoso had looked the high priest in the face, it would have wounded his heart, for his countenance and the changing of his color, which was his face, declared the inward agony of his mind. Meaning it was so bad. If you were to look at him in the face, you would be heartbroken with how stressed he was. For the man was so compassed with fear and horror of the body, that it was manifest to them that looked upon him what sorrow he had now in his heart. So you just looking at him, you can tell he is going through it. Others ran flocking out of their houses to the general supplication, because the place was like to come into contempt. So they feared that, damn, this is about to be evil. They're about to bring evil upon us. So everybody's basically, in a panic, right? They're stressed, they're losing their minds. And the women girt with sackcloth under their breasts, meaning they had sackcloth, they had put sackcloth upon themselves. Doesn't mean their breasts were exposed. Abounded in the streets, and the virgins that were kept in, ran, some to the gates and some to the walls, and others looked out of the windows. And all, holding their hands toward heaven, made supplication. So they made their cries up unto the Lord. Then it would have pitied a man to see the falling down of the multitudes in all sorts, and the fear of the high priest being in such an agony. Then they called upon the Almighty Lord to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. So he's like, look, this was it wasn't us, it was given to us, right? There was some that gave it to us, they committed it to the temple. We can't just go and just give it away. Nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. So he said, nope, go up in there and grab the money. Now, as he was there present himself with his guard about the treasury, the Lord of spirits and the Prince of all power caused a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of God, and fainted and were sore afraid. Now, it doesn't mean that they all passed out, right? But they were weak with fear, seeing that apparition the Lord had sent down. And they were like, oh. For there appeared unto them an horse with a terrible rider upon him. Imagine that, an angel that appears, and you just see this massive horse and this rider that just looks scary, and adorned with a very fair covering. And he ran fiercely and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet. So his horse, you turn around, you see a horse, a divine horse coming full speed at you, and an angel with his boot coming right to your face. It says here, and it seemed that now this could have been, I imagine it to be the angel kicking him. Maybe he might have done a U-turn and had the horse lift up the feet and wham, kick his ass. But in any case, he got kicked. And it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete harness of gold. So their armor and everything, the armor on the horse, the armor on the angel, all of that was gold, pure gold, just fine, divine majesty. Moreover, two other young men appeared before him. So you just see angels appearing. You see one on a horse and two pull up. It says notable in strength. So you can see, like, you can tell these are strong men. You see somebody like the Hulk. I'm not saying that's what they look like, but if you saw the Hulk, you wouldn't say he looks weak. All right. So when it says they're notable in strength, that means when you see somebody, you can tell this guy looks strong. This wasn't no sleeper build. No. This wasn't. They weren't wearing any pump covers. Nah, they were out there, letting you know, like, okay, excellent in beauty and comely in apparel. So it's not like one of them's nose is looking a little bent, or no, they look perfect. Who stood by him on either side. So one appears on his right, one appears on his left, and scourged him continually, and gave him many sore stripes. So today they'll say they jumped him, right? Maybe one of them clotheslined him, maybe RKO'd him, DDT'd him, pile driver, just beating his ass. Okay, can you imagine that? Imagine what it feels like to have a hook, okay, or a liver shot from an angel from heaven, straight into the stomach. At this point, you coughing up air, spit, water, yesterday's dinner, okay, maybe last week's dessert too. Yeah, he was. And this wasn't like they were just like lightly, just pushing him around. Dude almost died. And Heliodorus fell suddenly onto the ground. So he was probably bleeding, face all busted up, and was compassed with great darkness. So they beat his ass so bad, everything just started looking dark to him. But they that were with him took him up and put him into a litter. So after the beatdown was over, his men came in there and they put it. The litter is like the like, imagine coming with a horse, and you got the little carriage, like kind of like the little carriage. Thus him that lately came with a great train, right? He came with the carts and all that to carry the money away, and with all his guard into the said treasury, they carried out, being unable to help himself with his weapons. He couldn't do anything. He was powerless. And manifestly they acknowledged the power of God. For he by the hand of God was cast down and lay speechless without all hope of life. So he was on the brink of death. He pretty much saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And he couldn't speak. He was just there, barely even breathing. But they praised the Lord that had miraculously honored his own place. For the temple, which a little afore was full of fear and trouble, when the Almighty Lord appeared, was filled with joy and gladness. So you had Israelites rejoicing, praising the Lord. Then straightways certain of Heliodorus' friends prayed Onias that he would call upon the Most High to grant him his life, who lay ready to give up the ghost. So he looked like he was already there, halfway dead, a foot in the grave. So they basically begged Onias to pray for him so that he would live. So the high priest, suspecting lest the king should misconceive that some treachery had been done to Heliodorus by the Jews, offered a sacrifice for the health of the man. So he was like, look, if he dies here, the king might think that we are the ones who like did something to him, right? Because he came to take the money. So let's not do that. So he offered a sacrifice for him. Now, as the high priest was making an atonement, the same young men, being the angels, in the same clothing appeared. So they reappeared again and stood beside Heliodorus, saying, you lucky. Give Onias the high priest great thanks, insomuch as for his sake the Lord hath granted thee life. So he's like, you are very, 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 because boy, we were taking you out. And seeing that thou hast been scourged from heaven, declare, this is a divine ass whooping, declare unto all men the mighty power of God. And when they had spoken these words, they appeared no more, so they disappeared. So, so Heliodorus, after he had offered sacrifice unto the Lord, and made great vows unto him that had saved his life, and saluted Onias, returned with his host to the king. So he was not happy about that. Then testified he to all men the works of the great God, which he had seen with his eyes, and also felt with his body. And when when the king Heliodorus, who might, this should say asked, right? The king, it's just say when the king asked Heliodorus, who might be a fit man to be sent yet once again to Jerusalem. So he said, who do you think would worthy to to go back there and do the job? He said, if thou hast any enemy or traitor, send him thither, and thou shalt receive him well scourged, if he escape with his life. So he's like, look, that's a death sentence. If there's anybody you don't like, any enemy, any traitor, you send him there. Forget prison. Send him over there. And if he comes back alive, trust me, he's going to be well disciplined and very well behaved. For in that place, no doubt, there is an especial power of God. For he that dwelleth in heaven hath his eye on that place. I would know, right, from Heliodorus' perspective, and defendeth it, and he beateth and destroyeth them that come to hurt it. And the things concerning Heliodorus and the keeping of the treasury fell out on this sort. So this is the matter concerning Heliodorus. Now, I did also want to pull this up here in the secular history, because it goes into, when you look at the death of Seleucus, it says here on September 3rd, 175 BC, Seleucus was assassinated by Heliodorus, one of his leading bureaucrats. The ancient sources do not record a motive for this act. Possibly it was simple lust for power, or possibly the sources misattributed the death to the one who gained the most from it. Heliodorus took over as regent, ruling on behalf of Seleucus IV's young child Antiochus. Heliodorus' reign as regent was brief, however. Months later, he was replaced by Antiochus IV with support from Pergamon. Well, we know now what the motive is. He went and got his ass beat. Now he's now he's mad that he was subjected to that. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the book of 2 Maccabees, 3rd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.